good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our St. John's Power Hour series, hosted by the McAllen Society, which is our legacy society here at St. John's. My name is Susan Damiani, and I am the director of the McAllen Society. And we have been offering these virtual Power Hours since the pandemic. And it's just wonderful that it continues on. And like Diana said, so wonderful, and wonderfully, thank you, Diana. It's wonderful that we can share, such interesting information, but also the star of our Power Hours is Dr. Cipolla. And we're so happy that you decided to come back because when you were on the last time, like I said, it was very, very popular. And we could have, I think everyone could have stayed on the call for like another 3 hours just to listen to you talk. So I already told Dr. Cipolla, like, if we go over, we can't go over too much, but we'll leave you in suspense. And then already Dr. Cipolla has another idea for another talk. So I'm sure he'll be back on again. If you don't know Dr. Cipolla, he is a former professor, he's Professor Emeriti here at St. John's. And he graduated from NYU's Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And if you were listening a little bit of what he was talking about, he really has devoted his life to the study and the observance of Sicilian culture, language, and history. And so today we're going to hear a little bit, he's going to give us an insight on Sicilians. Today is, do Sicilians have a sense of humor? I know I dated a Sicilian and he was a very serious person. So I don't know if you're going to say, but you can't stereotype. You can't just say one for all. He was serious. He didn't have a sense of humor, Dr. Cipolla, but you tell me and enlighten us if you can answer this question. So we'll see. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cipolla now. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Can I start? Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. And I'm glad to be back. This is the second hour, and perhaps we can do more in the future. As I said, I'm going to be talking about and trying to answer the question, do Sicilians have a sense of humor? And hopefully I will not go over the limited time. So basically, this is the article, one of the chapters of my book called Siciliana, which is studies on Sicilian ethos and literature that you can buy. Siciliana. Let me start. It is widely believed that Sicilians, unlike Neapolitans, are typically not very expansive with their emotions. They are usually represented by the media as brooding, somber characters who are more prone to explode in anger than in laughter. The French writer Guy de Maupassant, who visited Sicily in the 19th century, observed a difference between Neapolitans and Sicilians and pointed out that in the Sicilian, I'm quoting, you find much of the gravity of the Arab. And D.H. Lawrence, who spent quite a bit of time in Taormina and wrote Lady Chatterley's Lover there, which is, by the way, a story of his wife's affairs with local men, and especially one named Giuseppe D'Allura, a cart driver from Castelmola, wrote the following about the character of Sicilians. I'm quoting. These Sicilians are all grave and black inside and without hope. And writers like Leonardo Sciascia, Vincenzo Consolo, and Gesualdo Bufalino, all Sicilians, have frequently portrayed them as sullen, resigned, taciturn, and desperate individuals who do not know how to sing or laugh. This is indeed quite a pessimistic appraisal of the character of Sicilians. The American media contributed in no small part to this image. Consider, for example, the character of the Corleone family in the Godfather movies. The figure of Don Corleone, never cracked a smile or laughed throughout the length of the two movies. The only time Don Corleone showed a lighter side was when he put fake teeth made from an orange rind to scare his grandson, and then he dropped dead among the tomatoes that he had growing in the backyard. Al Pacino's portrayal of Michael Corleone was even more somber. Pacino portrayed Michael as a strong, silent type who bears the weight of his family's woes upon his shoulders, and he cannot let himself go. If he had any sense of humor, he certainly gave no evidence of it. Thus, Sicilitude has come to mean, for some, discouragement, resignation, fatalism, and brooding silence. Sicilians, according to this portrayal, are incapable of laughing at themselves and at the world. Today, I am going to explore this myth and try to answer, do Sicilians have a sense of humor? Do they know how to laugh at themselves and at the world? Of course, dealing with Sicilians, you cannot be too absolute in one way or another, for the simple reason that they are really complex individuals, and the moment you think you have found the key, another door presents itself on which the key does not work. Nevertheless, the stereotype of the humorless Sicilian has been established, and once such stereotypes become universally accepted, it is very difficult to correct them. But today, I will try to chip away at it and suggest that Sicilians know how to laugh at themselves and at others, and they know how to enjoy a joke. Indeed, they have a highly developed sense of humor that has accompanied them throughout their 3,000 years of history. Considering the long and tortuous history that has seen so many different people come and go as conquerors, it would be quite ironical if Sicilians did not develop a keen sense of humor. Only by seeing the tragic events of their history through a carnival reflecting mirror could Sicilians have survived to this day as independent thinkers. I would like to illustrate Sicilian humor by telling you a story that I heard from a little town called Vallelunga Pratameno. It seems that the local priests delighted to relating the story of a family who lost the patriarch of the family in the hospital of Caltanissetta. They were immediately approached by a funeral director who offered his services. He was a fast-talking man, well-dressed with dark glasses, who convinced the disconsolate family that his firm could be trusted to provide unparalleled services to bury the deceased. He offered to take care of everything: the coffin, the suit for the dead, a funeral car to take the body back to Vallelunga. He even offered to provide a priest if the town did not have one, quoting a price for each item that he was adding. Having itemized everything, the total came to 2,300,000 lire. But seeing that they were such a nice family, he would give them a discount of 300,000 lire. Before they could reflect on the offer, he pushed the contract in before the confused and grieving son, and he signed it. But as they walked out of the hospital, they realized what they had done and began to question the deal. "We should have said no," said the son, but he didn't give us a chance to say a word. The uncle voiced his disappointment too, but it was the newly made widow who, in spite of inconsolable grief, came up with the following remark. Now, I can do this in Sicilian, but I don't know how many people will actually understand it. In any case, I'll do it in Sicilian. She said, "Tanto per chisto, tanto per chi daucio, ci mettiamo chisto e ci mettiamo staucio, magari un parrino ci voleva mettere, e meno male che lo morto ci lo mismo noace." I don't hear any laughing. I don't know if you're laughing, but anyway, I'll translate it. So much for this. I'm translating. So much for this, so much for that. She said, we will provide this service and that service. He even wanted to provide the priest. Thank God that we provided the body. The woman did not have to complete the sentence, but she meant God only knows what he would have charged if he had to provide the body as well. A very funny remark worthy of Pirandello. The woman clearly rose above the sorrow and suffering of the moment, forgetting her loss momentarily in the smile that must have accompanied her remark. That is an example of Sicilian humor. And it reminds me of something that Cicero, the great Roman orator, who spent a year in Marsala as a high official of Rome, said about Sicilian 2,000 years ago. Indeed, he would have been very surprised to hear Sicilians characterized as humorless individuals. For him, Sicilians were, and I'm quoting, an intelligent race, but suspicious and endowed with a wonderful sense of humor. He even added that, quoting, no matter how terrible a situation may be, Sicilians always have a witty remark to make about it. The poor widow's funny utterance is a perfect illustration of Cicero's insightful characterization. Cicero himself told another little story that testifies to the ability that Sicilians have to inject humor in the most difficult situations. As the story went, a Sicilian was commiserating with a friend in his garden next to a fig tree that his wife had used to hang herself. He accused the tree of sharing responsibility for his wife's act. The other Sicilian who was there expressed his deep condolences and tried to commiserate with him, tried to comfort him. Then finally, at the end, he said to him, could I please have a seedling from the fig tree? I'd like to plant it in my garden, hoping perhaps that his wife might be induced by the tree to commit the same act. I think that this tendency of Sicilians to come up with a witty remark that somehow overturns a difficult situation can be considered an Italian trait. Certainly, the taste for funny retorts, for the appropriate witty battuta, is as Italian as spaghetti. Boccaccio, Giovanni Boccaccio actually wrote 2 full days, devoted 2 full days of his Decameron to the motti arguti, the clever remarks. But in Sicily, it has a special character. As a young man growing up in Francavilla di Sicilia, I experienced every night playful ribbing and sometimes cutting retorts exchanged by the people sitting at the outdoor cafe. When TV was still a novelty and people enjoyed the art of conversation more than they do today, the favorite pastime was talk. While the topic of conversation may have been politics, soccer, town gossip, the style of the exchange remained always the same, cutting, sly, playful, at times even offensive. Indeed, what Sicilian men say to one another in a joking manner would quickly degenerate into a fight in the United States. But in Sicily, it is accepted as long as certain boundaries are not crossed. Sicilians know what these boundaries are. You don't insult the wife, and above all, never insult the mother. Such exchanges, however, never result in brawls, or very rarely. I can give you a couple of examples. If someone boasted, for example, of having gone to Catania, by the way, Francavilla from Catania is about 75 kilometers, but 50 years ago, it would take 3 hours by bus to get there. So when people went to Catania, they would say, "Oh, I went to Catania," as if they had accomplished a big thing. So a way to actually deflate them was to ask them the following question: "Ci baciasti I baddi oliocho?" Did you kiss the testicles of the elephant, which is the, uh, the symbol of the city of Catania? This usually was enough to start a series of remarks back and forth, um, uh, going to see who was going to have a winning hand. I can tell you, for example, that one time when the mayor of Catania came to St. John's University um, for an event that we had, I introduced him by saying, "Mr. Mayor, if you see a group of Sicilian tourists who are standing in back of the statue of the elephant in Piazza Duomo, which is where the mayor has his office, if you see from your window people blowing kisses to the elephant, please know that it is the group of Arbasicula on tour, because I told the guide the story about kissing the elephant's balls." And the mayor, who happened to be a medical doctor, told us the story that basically the elephant does not have testicles that are show, they are internal. So the Catanese people are basically very macho. They cannot stand the idea that their symbol of their city is an elephant that has no balls. So what did they do? According to the mayor, they made a collection and they put a prosthesis. So now the elephant has a prosthesis, fake balls between his legs. It seems natural that Sicilians should have a sense of humor. After all, they invented comedy. It was Epicharmus of Siracusa, who lived between 528 and 453 BC, that is, at the time of the city's golden age, who was credited by Plato as the inventor of comedies. He wrote 36 comedies, which unfortunately did not survive, except for some titles and some scenes. I will tell you one scene from Epicharmus. Epicharmus was a learned man, basically, who was conversant with the philosophy of his time. And the scene is an application of the philosophy of Heraclitus, who claimed that the world is always in constant flux, and that reality flows in an ever-changing stream. A man who was brought to court by a creditor argued that since all things change, the fellow who made the debt originally is no longer the same man and therefore owes nothing to the creditor. The judge apparently bought the argument and let him off. The creditor, however, was a good match for the man because he waited for the sly philosopher to come out of the courthouse and gave him the beating of his life. Back in the courthouse, the creditor paid him back with his own coin. He defended his action, claiming that since reality moves incessantly, he was not the same man who beat the sly philosopher. The judge, of course, had to find in favor of the defendant. It is not surprising to find Epicharmus' application of Heraclitus' principle re-emerging as a leitmotif of much of the work of another Sicilian playwright nearly 2,500 years later, Luigi Pirandello. The Nobel Prize winner from Agrigento based much of his writing on the idea that life flows incessantly, changing, reshaping man continuously so that he cannot claim to be today the same man he was yesterday. The flow of change is such that it denies man his identity. While he thinks he is one and the same person, in reality, he is no one. Not only is he no one, Everyone who comes into contact with him has a different opinion of what he is. He is therefore as many men as the people who know him. These concepts are expressed in his novel Uno, Nessuno, e Centomila, One, No One, and 100,000, and in some of his plays. But Pirandello's opus is inextricably bound with the concept of humor. In 1908, he wrote an essay on humor that provided the theoretical basis for much of his work. He defined humor as the sentimento del contrario, the feeling of the opposite, which can be explained quickly as a process that allows us to see behind appearances, revealing something that overturns our first impression of things. He described two steps in the process. The first is when we become aware that something is not quite as it should be. For example, when we see an elderly woman who has plastered her face with too much makeup. That is what is called the avvertimento del contrario, when you notice that something contrary to what it should be. That causes us to laugh or make fun. But if we then reflect that the woman has a much younger husband whom she desperately wants to keep from noticing her aging, we realize a deeper meaning. We can no longer laugh at her. We understand her better. Our laughter becomes tinged with compassion. It's the same when we see someone falling down. Our initial reaction is to laugh, but if we see the person got hurt, our laughter turns to something else. The emblem for this Pirandellian humor is the god Janus, who has two faces, one that laughs and the other that cries. Or as Pirandello would say, the face that laughs is laughing at the crying face. The most characteristic form of Sicilian humor is of the Pirandellian kind. Sicilian humor is generally reflective, ironic, inward turning, self-directed. Let me give you a few examples with two proverbs. Scappare non è vergogna, qualche volta è sacramento di vita. Running counter to the accepted mode of behavior in Sicily, to run away from a fight is generally deemed a shameful act. You must stand your ground. The proverb says that Sicilians are pragmatists with a sense of humor after all. But the proverb that speaks volumes of the Sicilians' inward turning humor is, I'm reading in Sicilian, ringraziamo a Dio per chiddu che ne dona e allo re per chiddu che ne lassa. We thank God for all he gives us and the king for all he leaves us, in which the Sicilians express their profound resignation to being subjects to forces beyond their control, while continuing unperturbed their journeys through life. But a perfect illustration of the inward turning character of Sicilian humor is contained in a little story told by Jane Vessel and was published in the National Geographic. Now, try to imagine traffic jam in Palermo. One time, in order to get out of the town, for us, it took us almost an hour to actually get out. So imagine cars sitting stopped in the middle of traffic, and imagine a woman inside the car who keeps honking her horn, even though nobody is moving. So this is the little scene that went up. This woman keeps honking her horn, and the man next to her gets upset and stops her. I'll do it in Sicilian. He asks her, "Ma perché suona?" And she replies, "Why are you?" I'm sorry. He said, "Why are you honking? You can't go anywhere. Why are you honking?" The woman looks at him and syllabizes the word and says, "A mia mi piace la musica." I like music. The man turns around to him, and obviously a very It didn't like the retort and says, and io ci rompo le corna a suo marito. I'm going to break your husband's horns. Oh yeah? I'm going to make him another pair. Now, you probably need to understand, I don't know what horns means. Horns are these, by the way. I have my hands like this. This is the most offensive gesture that you can give to a Sicilian, which means basically, if you have horns, that means that your wife is cheating on you. Now, the man, by accusing her of saying that he's going to break her husband, he's actually accusing her of being an adulteress. She doesn't care about that, but to have the last word, she said, "I'm going to build him another set of horns." So if the story was invented, it was certainly bien trouvé. But this actually tells you the inward turning quality of a retort. In other words, she's accepting the accusation of being an adulteress, but to have the last word, she says to him that she's going to do another set of horns on him. That Sicilians have a sense of humor can be testified by their willingness to play practical jokes on one another. I don't know how many of you actually know the name Angelo Musco, who happened to be one of the most famous Sicilian actors of his time, almost as famous as actors from Hollywood. Anyway, he performed in many plays by Martoglio and Pirandello and achieved the status of a star in Italy comparable to modern day Hollywood stars. There are many anecdotes that testify to his quick wit. I'm just going to read you one. One day he stood on Via Etnea, which is the main long straightaway that leads all the way from the Piazza Duomo all the way to Mount Etna, and he flagged a trolley car that was passing. The trolley stopped, opened the door. He put his foot on top of the steps and proceeded to fix his shoelaces very slowly, while the driver was looking at him flabbergasted. When he finished fixing his shoelaces, he turned around to the driver and said, "Grazie, può andare." Thank you very much. You can leave now. I could give you a whole bunch of other things, but maybe what I will do is I will read you a few poems because as the editor of Arbasicula, I receive a great deal of poems. Many of them are humor and comic, and sometimes, and I usually include 2 or 3 comic poems in the review of Arbasicula. So I'm going to read you perhaps a few. One, I'm going to read you one by a man named Vincenzo Ancona, whose book I translated into English, and it's called Maledetto la lingua, damn language, because the man lived in Brooklyn and never learned how to speak English, or he spoke broken English. And he said at one point, he was cursing la lingua, English, because in his own language, he thought he would be like a Cicero. He spoke so well. But in English, everything came out as gibberish. Anyway, I'll read you. I don't know if I should read the Sicilian first, but maybe I'll read you the first. This is a shorter one. And it's something about, it's called L'Arca di Noè, in Noah's Ark. Si conta che Noè faccia a chiamare tutte le armali dall'arca che fece. Un elefante sentisse ammuttare, si vota, vidi, un puci, e a che giudice, oè, lascia un minuto un po' aspettare, Qua non c'è preferenza, siamo amici. Scusami, hai ragione a dire questo, dissi Lupucci. Io non t'aveva visto. And I'll give you the translation. In Noah's Ark, they say that Noah made all animals climb into the ark that he had made. An elephant felt someone pushing him. He turned around, and when he saw a flea, he cried, I say, can't you hold on for one more minute? There is no preference here. We are all friends. I'm sorry. What you say is very true, replied the flea. But I just didn't see you. I'll read you another poem by Vincenzo Ancona, and I will do it only in English because I'm not sure if people are actually understanding what I'm saying. And anyway, it's called An Innocent Wish. An innocent young boy, 5 years of age, said to his father, I want to get married. Go on, her father joked. You're in a hurry. Have you a girlfriend? Who's your wife to be? What girlfriend? They're not worth the bother. I want the one who loves me. I want the one who loves me, my grandmother. Oh, no, Petruzzo, said the father then. She is my mother. You can't marry her. It's true she loves you with great tenderness, but surely you can't marry my own mother. Why not, Dad? Aren't we one family? And what about yourself? You married mine. I could actually continue a long time. Do I have? I think we have probably one more poem. And I will go back to Nino Martoglio, who loved to make fun of his fellow Catanesi pulling their legs on the time. And this is basically, I'll read it in Sicilian and then I'll read the English and then I will probably, well, maybe I don't know. I'll go on. I can go on for a long time. But anyway, this is called L'Usuli e la Luna by Nino Martoglio. Che ne volete, caro amico mio? A mia mi ha fatto sempre questa impressione che a petto di Lusuli su un schifio la luna e tutte le costellazioni. Lusuli è fatto di una costruzione che fa un calore, calorato Dio, che si restaura una popolazione. E invece con la luna non quario. Un momento, approvo ciò che avete detto. L'usura ce la vinci in questa classe, ma in quanto all'uscio mi parete pazzo. La luna nesce quando è scuro fitto e io sparagno sopra l'oggio a gasse. Lo sole nesce a giorno. Che ne faccio? The sun and the moon. My dear old friend, what else can I say? What else can I reply? I've always felt this way. I don't know why. The stars and moon, when all is said and done, are worthless when compared to our own sun. The sun was made precisely in a way to give us heat, thank God, throughout the day, making the people comfortable, okay. The moon gives out no heat. What can I say? All right, I do agree with what you said. As far as giving heat, the sun is champ. But as for giving light, I think you strayed. The moon comes out when it's pitch dark. Therefore, I save the gas I need to light the lamp. The sun comes out in daylight. What's it for? As I said, I could continue a long time for all these things here. And maybe what I will do is I will do one more joke or one more story, which tells you basically how Sicilian humor is always tinged with compassion. It's all something that we call Italicum acetum, Italian vinegar. That is sweet and sour, at them. There's a wonderful book that I quote by Roberto Alaimo, the title of which is called A New Repertoire of the Madmen of Palermo, which is a compendium of strange characters who move around the city of Palermo. I will read you one thing. They all start with the word uno, a person, one man or one woman. And I'll read you one about the Duchess of Verdura, which is my favorite. One was the Duchess of Verdura, who began to lose her hearing and her eyesight when she was 90 years old. She was ashamed to admit it and pretended that she was able to hear and see. She loved to listen to her little canary bird. When the bird died, the family, not to tell her the bad news, put a yellow lemon in the cage. The Duchess lived 10 more years and continued to sit smiling in front of the little cage to listen to her favorite bird singing. When the lemon became rotten, the family replaced it with a fresh one. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for listening. I don't know what
Dr. Cipolla, you want to open it up for questions now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know if we
lost
have.
myself.
No, that's okay. This was so interesting. I loved it. Yes, I think someone asked again the question of will it be recorded? The session is recorded and we will be sending you follow-up information. If Dr. Cipolla, after the call, if you can email me the information on, the membership information and also any of the events that you were talking about that you have scheduled for the remaining year, that would be nice to share with anyone. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Cipolla? So what did you think? Do you think he solved the question? Does Sicilians have sense of humor? Interesting sense of humor, I think. Very interesting.
Did you like the story about the Duchess of Verdura?
I loved all of them. They were great. I thought that was a funny one.
That
Me and Luke were
so
laughing
touching,
just now.
so touching, because it actually gives you the sense of there's a woman 90 years old who loved this bird, and then she couldn't hear, but she pretended that she could hear, and the family played along with it, putting a lemon there that looked like a canary. Wonderful.
I love that. That's great. I like the other story about the woman and the husband that was cheating on her.
Oh,
I thought that was funny too.
as I
I
said,
like that one. That was very good. Oh, someone said they're chuckling. Oh, okay, I'm chuckling. What books did you speak about Sicilian? I think I'm saying it right. Am I, Irene? I hope so.
what book did I want? What book did I say?
Irene, do you want to unmute yourself?
The
she's
book
still on.
that I quoted from is called Siciliana. The book that I wrote called Siciliana. It has all different things about Sicilian culture. There's something about the connection between the Greeks and the Sicilians. There's something about the Jews in Sicily, which I told you before we went on air, which is something that most people do not know, that the Jews were in Sicily for many, many centuries until they were actually chased out Sicily by King Ferdinand of Spain in 1493. But they represented basically 10% of the Sicilian population, and they were ingrained because they were well integrated into the society of Sicily. And they were treated very well. They were also responsible for actually contributing to the birth of the Sicilian language, because they actually wrote in Sicilian. very early in time in the 13th century, so that they contributed actually to developing the Sicilian language as we know it today. But they were chased out of Sicily in 1493. But many people do not know that they probably have Sicilian Jewish blood in them without knowing. And many people actually um wonder if they do. And they ask me the same thing. So
You
the
have to
book,
do ancestry.com then to find out.
yes,
Because it
no, but
is
I mean,
interesting that you say that. I'm not Sicilian, but I do have a little, when I did do the ancestry.com, and when I had a small percentage of Jewish in my, makeup, and I
oh,
was like, where
oh,
is that
very well.
coming from? But maybe it's sort of what you were
Maybe
saying.
it's from there because the
Right.
Jews were
Yeah.
there from the
Right.
first century
Interesting.
uh, until for 20 centuries, basically. Well, not 15th centuries. The 15th
Right.
century, they were there. And they were, every city of Sicily had a congregation of Jewish people. In
Mm.
Palermo, they had 5,000 people who lived in Palermo who were Jewish. And Salemi, in very different things. When we go to, for example, Cefalu, which is
Mhm.
Palermo, an hour and a half from Palermo, there are ghettos where the Jews used to live. You can still see, of course, uh, most of the synagogues were changed into churches,
Mm.
and so you don't find too many structures that are Jewish, except that they were transformed. Um,
Right. Well,
but
you have
the
the
book
Jewish
is, is
quarters in
yeah,
Rome too, right?
yes, oh
Yeah.
yes,
So it's all, yeah.
ghettos are a
Is that
place
where they
where they,
went though? Like when they left Sicily, then where do you know where they went? Did they go to their homeland or did they go to other areas of Italy?
well, when they were chased out of Sicily, they went to Naples. They were chased out of Naples, and then from there they went further north,
Oh,
Rome,
okay.
to Venice. But they also created areas in the Mediterranean, in Greece, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They used the Sicilian names for their uh, congregation when they
Hmm.
went to different places.
That's
They went
interesting.
to Northern Africa, uh, Greece, Albania, and all the different places. But they were, as I said, at that time, Sicily had maybe 500,000 people in the 15th century, 500,000 people. There were at least 50,000 Jews living in
Wow.
Sicily. And
Wow.
they were important. They were very important. They were doctors. They were mostly engaged in all kinds of different uh, jobs. They were ironmongers. They worked with iron. They worked with gold and silver. Smith, and in fact, some of the names for those people are basically Jewish names. Anyway,
Interesting.
be
Well, I
honest
have
today,
there's some comments here about your book. First, they want to know if it's available on Amazon.
it's available on Amazon, but you can
Okay.
buy it from me directly if you write
You're going to give us that information and then we'll let
the
everybody
name of the
know.
company is
Okay.
Legas,
Okay.
Legas,
GAS, right.
and it has the same post office box 149, Mineola, New York, 11501. The book costs $18. Um, but I have all kinds of other books. I published so far. I've published 150 books.
Wow.
150 books, and I'm proud to say. I don't know if you know this, Susan, but Legos won a very prestigious award last year
I did
in
not know that.
2022. It's called Premio per la traduzione, Premio Nazionale per la Traduzione, which is a prize given to four major prizes: two for translators, one Italian and one foreign, and two for publishers, one Italian, one foreigner. I won, I won it for as an editor, who has published lots of books on in translation, because most of the books that I do are in bilingual form. So I won. I'm very proud of that. So
Oh,
it's
that's nice. Wow,
I
congratulations.
was supposed to go to Rome, but for some reason, because of the pandemic, they didn't have the celebration, and they were supposed to have the presentation of the award in the National Library in Rome, but they never had
nice.
they never had it because of the pandemic.
The
So
pandemic.
hopefully,
That's a
they were
shame.
saying they were going to do
They were going to do it again. They
three
should.
celebrations in one, but I haven't heard from them. In any
Someone
case,
that they should do that, because that's
but
that's a shame.
it's an important prize because it actually comes with a very large money
Oh, wow.
prize.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for
Yeah.
you. That's wonderful.
Well,
We have another person who just said, I found a book by Carlo Treviso by that name. Siciliana Studies on Sicilian Ethos and Literature is the
and
title.
literature. Yes,
Found it
that's
on
the right book.
Amazon.
That's
Yeah.
the right one.
Okay. And then someone said, I remember blowing a kiss to the back of the elephant in Catania, but I don't remember the significance doing it. Is it like throwing a coin into the Trevi
Yeah,
Fountain?
it's something. No, it's just a joke. It's a joke that I told the travel agent one time. I told the story. It's a way of actually. It's a joke, basically. It doesn't mean like throwing the coin in the fountain, but we did it. We do it all the time. We did it last year. In fact, with Jeff Fagan was there. He could tell you. We stand in back of it and we blow a kiss.
Oh, really?
But the whole idea that Catanese people are very macho, and they couldn't stand the idea that their elephant was an emasculated elephant. So they put fake testicles on him, and they made a collection. They made a collection. Because, yeah, and they put, and it's so it's a joke. Funny. It's a joke.
Well, someone was saying that now they were half Jewish and half Sicilian, but now based on what you're saying, they think now they're more Jewish than Sicilian. Based on
it's been a long time. So from the 15th century. Okay. From the 15th century, we're talking about 15th century, the Jews left Sicily in 1493, all of them, not all of them. They were given actually a chance to remain in Sicily if they became Catholic. So many people converted to became Catholic, and therefore they didn't have to go.
Oh.
So many people actually remained. There are very few Jewish people. Some of them actually hid away the fact that they were Jews, and they continued practicing in secret their own religion. But most of them remained, especially the rich ones. The rich ones actually remained because they didn't want to give up what they had.
Right.
But the point is that the Jews in Sicily were treated differently from elsewhere. In fact, in Sicily, they were so well integrated into the fabric of society that they could own land. They were actually farmers in some cases, which is not normal for Jews. They were. So it's a long article.
You're teasing us a little bit with your next discussion when we have everybody.
That will be the next thing. But there's also something about the Arabs, the Arabs who were in Sicily. In that book, Siciliana, there's a chapter on the Arabs and what they did for Sicily. And the Arabs certainly are one group of people who were very instrumental in changing Sicilian character somehow. They they arrived in 827 in Mazzara del Vallo, and it took them about over 100 years to actually conquer all of Sicily.
Wow.
In fact, the last city to be conquered by the Arabs was near Messina, a little town in Taormina. Taormina was conquered in 952. 952, when so it took them 125 years basically to conquer all of Sicily. And the eastern part of Sicily is was less dominated by the Arabs. So the Arabs remain more in Mazzara del Valle, which is in the west side, from Palermo through the middle part. But on the eastern coast, mostly the Greeks remained through the Byzantine Empire, so the Greek Byzantine. So that basically, I gave a lecture one time to a group of Greeks, and I started my lecture by saying, I am Greek, basically, because I was born in Francavilla, which is near Taormina, and that whole part of Sicily is basically a place where the Greeks remained. The Arabs weren't that dominant in that place. In fact, if you look at the different name places that the Arabs gave to all the Arabs, changed all the different names of Sicilian towns, Sicilian localities, and you can still see them. In fact, if you see the name Caltanissetta, any word that begins with calt is Arabic.
Right.
So calt means castle or a castle. So Caltanissetta means the castle of beautiful women in Arabic. All of them. Marsala, you all know Marsala, the wine.
Right.
Marsala is a corruption of an Arabic word. It means Mars al-Allah, the port of Allah. Marsala means the port of Allah.
I never knew that. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So all of these names that you see, Caltagirone, Caltanissetta, Caltavuturo, there's dozens of names that begin with cult. Also, dozens of names that begin with Mensil, which means also a stopping place, a place where people who travel stop to get food and things. So that became like Mezzoiuso, for example. The town of Mezzoiuso, it was basically Mensil Youssef. Youssef is the name of Joseph. So it was the stopping place of Joseph, basically.
I see.
And even word like Isola delle Femmine, those of you who've traveled and been to Palermo at the airport, when you drive from Palermo all the way down from the airport in Terraisi, which is now called Borsellino, Falcone Borsellino Airport. If you drive there, you see a little in the middle of the water called Isola delle Femmine, which in Italian means the island of women.
Women,
It has nothing to do with women. It has nothing to do with them. The tourist guide always invent all kinds of stories about the island of women. Oh, that's the place where they actually put women who cheated on their husband. Not true. It has nothing to do with women. So the word Isola delle Femmine, it refers to the island that belonged to Fimi. It was an island belonging to a guy named Fimi, Eufemio. And it was an Arabic name. So when you say Fimi, it's so close to the Sicilian word Femmini, which means women.
Right.
So it became the island of women. Has nothing to do.
One of our listeners, they said they have a book of your Sicilian poems that's translated by you called Tornu. Am I saying it right?
Tornu. Oh, yes, by my friend and vice president of Arbasicula, Nino Provenzano. I translated, he's written three books of poems that I translated into English. He's our famous vice president of Arbasicula.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
I have one quick question before we close. You're getting back to the title of your talk. When when people left Sicily, did you find that, the translations and everything got watered down? And so, the poems and, the humor and all of that, did that change when they came to America? Or do you think we have a good understanding of of the Sicilian culture, like they were back in Sicily? Or do you think things
Well,
did
I don't
get
know
watered down?
if Americans have a good understanding of Sicily, because basically the media has portrayed them as mafiosi,
Mm,
always connected with the mafia, and it's something that I've been trying to fight for the last 40 years.
I know.
That one time the New York Times wrote an article that said basically that 10% of the Sicilian people live on the mafia. So if you figure the 10% of the Sicilian people, we have 5 million people living in Sicily. That's 500 people. And one in 10, if you happen to be with the Sicilian crowd, 1 in 10 people, there was always, if there's 10 people, there's a mafioso there. Uh, that is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. People are fighting against the mafia nowadays. They still exist, but it's a different kind of mafia. It's a different kind of mafia. It's moved up north. It has become globalized. Let's put it this way. But people in Sicily are fighting against it. They refuse to pay what they call the pizzo, the pay protection. They don't. They refuse to do that. There's
Right.
an organization that refused to pay the pizza. So in America, Sicilians are always not seen in the right light. Not seen in the right light. They have a poor. Well, things have changed. Things have changed, but Sicilians were not well treated in this country, even though 40% of the people, of the Italian people, Italian American people, are basically from have Sicilian origins. Sicilians have been maligned, but we are trying to change that, and hopefully we're doing well. Because when we are letting the big secret that is Sicily, we are letting the secret out. Sicily is the best kept secret. And we are doing it. As I told you before we started, Sicily right now, at this point, is inundated by tourists. You cannot find a hotel room in Palermo. And we had trouble in our own tour. And I remember this is our 28th tour, and we did it consecutively, except for the 2 years of the pandemic. But we did one in September, we're doing another one this year. And I can tell you that we have made some, I don't take credit for it, but we have certainly done our part. When we went to Segesta, the beautiful temple of Segesta, on the first tour of our 28th tour, the first tour, there was only one bus at Segesta, ours. If you go to Segesta now, you cannot find a place to put your bus. Last time we were there were like 25 buses, which means that people are beginning to discover Sicily, the wonderful food, the wonderful scenery. Sicily has everything. If you go to different regions of Sicily, they don't have the same thing that we have in Sicily, because Sicily has the Baroque, Sicily has ancient Sicily, has the Greek. Sicily has the best temples, the best Greek temples in the world. They're better preserved than the ones in Greece. So we have everything, and people are learning, and that's why they're going to Sicily every year.
Well, I agree
So,
with you. I think with the traveling, that will open people's minds up and to be
oh
less
yes.
judgmental and ignorant towards, the whole Sicilian
I remember
culture.
I
So I think
remember
it's
during the
important.
first tour, people would ask me, "Is there electricity there?"
Oh, geez, really?
Or is it
ridiculous.
safe to walk around?
Right.
Is it
Right.
safe to
That,
walk
yeah, it's
around?
true.
Are
That
you
they would get,
kidding?
yeah.
Palermo, with all the, and it's certainly much safer than New York,
No, I'm
and
sure.
other
Mm,
places in this
right.
country.
Right. No, it's true. That's very true. Well, on that note, thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing all your wonderful knowledge about Sicily. For sure, by listening to you, we get a even better understanding of what a beautiful place it is. I still have not visited, and I'm going to get there. And I
Well,
want to get
perhaps.
there even more because
Well,
you talk about it, and it just sounds
let's
so
try to do it
beautiful.
soon.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for, all the work that you do, and it's
My
so
pleasure.
important in preserving this beautiful and wonderful culture. So thank you. We're getting lots of thank yous from you here. We appreciate that. And we will definitely send you all the information that Dr. Cipolla mentioned during the discussion. You'll get a follow-up
It's
email.
very easy. All you have to do is just send $30,
Mm,
$30 to our Basicula, and I'll send you the information.
wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, nice
Grazie,
seeing you all.
everyone. Thank you.